about 12:32. Folks are still joining us, but I want to go ahead and do a formal welcome to our conversation today. Scott and I are thrilled you're here to talk about building a digital workforce with intention and opportunity. So I'll continue to let folks in as people arrive. But in the interest of time, I think we want to dive in. Thrilled to be able to do this jointly with our trusted partner of a couple of years, Scott Burns of Structural. So some of you on the call are familiar with us at Advisa, and some of you on the call are more familiar with Structural. So we're just gonna start here with a brief introduction. As you may know, if you're familiar with us, I'm Heather and I'm president of the Advisa team, and we are in the business of leadership development. So we work really hard to inspire leaders at all levels to engage their people through the meaningful use of assessments, customized learning experiences, as well as strategic consulting. So that ability to be intentional about helping people succeed and reach their potential is what we're all about. And that's how we got connected in a really positive way with Structural. So I'll let Scott briefly introduce Structural, and then we'll do a couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll dive in.
Great. Thanks, Heather, and hi, everybody. It's really great to be here. Really nice group of people, and some of you know us, and some know Advisa, and some work with both of us. So it's a great, great combination of folks. So we're really a technology company, and our technology is built to connect people to opportunity. So we're going to talk a lot about marketplaces later. That's a big part of this discussion, and so we'll dive in on that. But really, we think of our system almost, when you open it up, like an internal LinkedIn. So it's got a dynamic people directory and an opportunity marketplace, again, that will get a lot of attention later, not just in how we do it, but in what we've learned about marketplaces. But the bottom line is, before COVID, it was about unlocking potential, saving people time, and making work better for everyone. We actually talk about unleashing the potential of people and teams. It's really our mission. And of course, in this dramatic and interesting year, some aspects of that have accelerated and some have shifted a little bit. And so I'm just looking forward to sharing what we've learned and continuing this conversation.
Excellent. Great. So a couple housekeeping items before we dive in. Feel free to leave yourselves muted. Sorry, I'm still admitting folks here as the little ding happens for me. Feel free to leave yourselves muted. There will be time at the end for some breakout rooms where you'll be able to turn your cameras on and engage with some of the other folks who have joined this call. And there will also be a lot of time at the end for conversation and questions that you may have for Scott and me. So we'll just kind of frame up really our three kind of keys to creating that really engaging environment for helping people learn and grow and connect to opportunity, even in the midst of doing so digitally, which many of us have been finding our way with that. So before we get too far into it, we would love to pause and just get a sense of where each of you are with this idea of exploring opportunities and connecting to opportunities in your organization. So we have a poll here. As you consider your career at your current organization, how much opportunity for involvement, networking, or development is available or has been communicated to you? So we would love for you to weigh in on this. So give it a couple seconds. And then we'll show the results. Looks like we have about 65% of the folks on the call have voted so far. %, couple more of you, go ahead and vote, and then we'll see how we are here. Okay, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So, excellent. The good news is those of you that have taken the initiative to be part of this conversation today, you're experiencing some and many opportunities. A handful of you are saying, not so much. So that's good to know. Our wider kind of perspective on this, as both Scott and I have done research and as we have worked closely with our own clients, we definitely see, especially in some of our larger organizations, that people are craving the opportunity to learn and grow. And not everybody is as lucky as many of you are on this call, where you have clarity or line of sight into what are the opportunities and how might I fit into those. So thank you. I'm going to stop sharing the results here, close that out. That gives us a good sense of who we have. And so just to zoom out from your personal experience to some of that broader research that we've looked at, 20% of employees are confident that it's easier to find a new role within their organization than doing so externally. Wouldn't it be amazing if instead of only 20%, that number was more like 80% or 90%? What we all want during this time of remote work, as well as once we return to in-person work, we want to create a magnetic work environment where our employees feel confident that they have the opportunities, the support, and the skills and tools to grow within their existing organization. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to share really 3 keys to unlocking the learning potential, the opportunity potential for employees in your organization. So the first one that we're going to talk about, there's going to be 3 M's: mindset, marketplace, and mastery. And the first one we're going to dive into is what we call mindset. So one of the questions that we've been asking a lot recently as COVID has come along and knocked out our strategies, upended our best plans and intentions, taken us out of our usual work environments and landed us in our basements, where we're working alongside kids who are doing school, etc. A good question to kind of create a different frame for this time is, what once in a career learnings you've experienced this year and how you are better for them. And what this question does for people is it takes an individual's mindset from focusing on the frustrations, the challenges, the hard things, all that's been lost, and it turns their attention and creates a frame, a new frame for them around, what has this once in a lifetime global pandemic experience created for me in terms of a once in a lifetime or once in a career learning experience? So this is something that you can do with your teams and just simply ask them, what have you learned through this that you couldn't have learned any other way? And how does that strengthen you as a leader or an individual contributor? So right there, asking that question puts people in a mindset of learning and development. And if you're the leader of that team and you're asking that question, you're demonstrating a growth mindset so that people understand what's important here is that we move forward and that we are resilient and that we're stronger as a result of having persevered than we were before this occurred. So following along, that idea of reframing adversity can also be applied to what innovations, what discoveries have we achieved? You know, many of the changes and things that have occurred in the last 9 months or so they were sort of on their way. You know, things were in motion, but I think many would agree that what COVID has done is just hastened these changes. It's really increased the speed at which we were able to make some of these pivots. So this is another really healthy mindset kind of question that turns people's focus toward what have we achieved, what have we done, and how has that helped us really get creative. You've heard the saying that constraint breeds creativity. And then, of course, training. When you have an opportunity to engage with your team, make sure that you're always modeling a growth mindset or a learning mindset in one-on-ones. The way that you run those meetings with folks when you're checking in either on work or on people as individuals, you always have the chance to ask these kinds of questions and to model for people that we're not going to get stuck. We're not going to stay in the space of frustration and loss. We're going to take this adversity and we're going to move forward and we're going to learn something from it. So that's that idea from the title of this of being intentional. It all starts with mindset. So as we go to Marketplace, I'm going to transition it to Scott. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and Scott's going to pick up where I left off.
So thanks, Heather. I love this discussion on mindset. I've been working with a coach for a long time in my career. I have had two different ones, and the current coach, who's wonderful and brings these kind of perspectives in to a lot of our discussions, was saying to me, like, you know, what if you looked at every situation that occurs and thought to yourself, you know, what if this was the best thing that could happen? Mm-hmm. And I think in this reactive world we're living in, you know, where everyone's kind of stunned, shocked, shifting, changing, that change in mindset, just that little turn, that little shift can make a huge difference. So really excited to talk about marketplaces. I want to just back up and think about marketplaces more generally before we talk about talent marketplaces. And, you know, the marketplace is really one of the most compelling inventions in human history. Think about the bazaar and what that did, you know, in the ancient world, how it shifted things. Think about the value created from just people being able to buy, sell, trade, and the efficiency that happens around that, the dynamic shift in an economy that occurs when people can specialize, when they can find the right buyer, when they can move their products faster. And of course, you know, there's a huge history of that, but more recently with technology, we think of like an eBay marketplace or Amazon as this extraordinary kind of elevation of the original sort of shopping mall into something that is so far-reaching and vast that it almost defies the imagination. And obviously, that creates incredible value for buyers and sellers. Similarly, there's been talent marketplaces evolving. Some of us don't think of them that way, but for example, Uber is a talent marketplace. You know, you have somebody's capacity and their ability to get you somewhere, and you're going into that marketplace to kind of match your need with that seller of that service. There's other services some of you might be familiar with, like TaskRabbit, where you can place a task. There's a service called Turk, Amazon Turk, where you can hire somebody in another country to do some work in your company if you just have a certain set of functions you need from them. So this marketplace invention, right from the bazaar to the NASDAQ, has created extraordinary value for humanity. And I think that that's good framing, because how can we take that power into our internal environment as a marketplace for internal talent? So let's think about that here. First, though, back up a little bit. As Heather started to frame, you know, this event and this shock, in many cases, didn't create something totally new inside of a company. Often it accelerated some changes that were already underway. And so I love this quote from Scott Snyder, who wrote a wonderful book called Goliath's Revenge. COVID-19 is the shock that many leaders were trying to create or manufacture, that burning platform to get people to actually understand the need for change. So in your organization, you might have been a champion for digital transformation, or we need to embrace remote work, or we need to be more flexible, or we need to deploy teams. And every company on earth has gotten something, every organization on earth has gotten something done in this time that had taken years to even gather momentum for. But here we are. When I think about the pre-COVID time, some of the changes that were happening that I think have accelerated now actually, I think, translate into problems that were existing in work and that have gotten worse. One is that teams have gotten a lot more distributed, and talent has gotten a lot more fluid, and that the nature of that has created a lot of silos. And McKinsey actually came out with a study pre-COVID, 2018, that said knowledge workers waste the equivalent of a day per week looking for information and people to help them, what I call playing internal detective. So think about that, 20% of their time wasted. Number two, opportunities for individuals are elusive. And we think of opportunity not just as a new job or a major opportunity, but just an opportunity to connect, to contribute, to learn, to grow. Employees are actually twice as likely to look for those externally than they are to look for them internally. And I just spoke with a Fortune 500 company yesterday. Individual has been there for 15 years. And he said, I have a better network in the external world and on LinkedIn than I do internally, even though I've been here all of this time. We've had turnover, I've shifted jobs. And he said, honestly, I've been cultivating my external network for 30 years. I've only been cultivating the internal network for 15 years. And that really speaks to how hard it is to do it well. It has real consequences too. So it results in lost productivity, these two challenges, results in missed deals and opportunities. Think of that salesperson who needs that one person to help them, but can't get the help on the deal, or the project manager looking for some expertise that exists at the company, but it's hard to find, or the person that has it isn't available. Who else might have it? I can't figure it out. I'm playing the telephone game. It leads to slower innovation. Incredible research on this, that organizations that are strongly internally networked innovate faster and better. And then finally, it results in unwanted turnover. And that is really when you think of the idea of entering a workplace, maybe many of you, 50% of you said you see a lot of opportunity, but think of most people would be much less likely to answer that question positively. And they're much more likely to leave a company because when they go looking for opportunity, it's external, not internal. So we're thinking about all of this prior to COVID. And of course, as remote work accelerates, these challenges become much more apparent. So how do you address these challenges? So when you're thinking about a marketplace, the first place to think about talent marketplaces is, of course, LinkedIn, which is truly the ultimate external talent marketplace. And what does LinkedIn do? It allows everybody to create a profile of themselves and to promote themselves so they can be found. Then it allows people to find others. And then it organizes those big opportunities, and it really is primarily job opportunities, to match people up with what might be interesting with them to make their next move. So in a way, when you think about a talent marketplace and you start applying that concept internally, LinkedIn is a very good frame, because that's the gold standard. And that's what people sort of think of as the sort of key talent marketplace in their world, particularly white collar professionals, highly skilled professionals. They're going to be thinking this way. So why doesn't this exist internally? Well, there's a lot of challenges to launching a marketplace internally, but let's talk for a second about what the consequences are, what it feels like when you don't have this kind of fluidity inside an organization. So we talked about the concepts at a high level. These are actual quotes from clients for us. We lose out on deals because we don't get the rich sales support or internal expertise involved fast enough. This is my favorite. I used to run a 250 person company, and I once had a person say to me, when you have something interesting to do, you always give it to a contractor. So this number 2 here on the right, upper right, is my favorite. Often we bring in contractors to take care of things we could have handled in-house. It's a waste of money. It's also incredibly defeating to your own people if they're not given those opportunities. Another one, better alignment is needed between skills and client needs. Our project managers just don't have visibility across our talent pool. That quote came to us pre-COVID. It's so much more severe now. And then finally, we invest in opportunities in our organization. We have places to learn, we have volunteering, we have mentoring, we have all kinds of programs, and yet people aren't finding them. They're not matched up with them, and so they're not having the desired impact. And so the approach we've taken is not to reinvent the wheel, but rather to learn from all of this. And whether you end up using software to solve this problem, or maybe your organization is small enough and easy to handle that you can do it on your own, I have a few things we've learned by thinking about this internally. One is you've got to really focus first on creating a really nice profile of the people in an organization, doing it in a comprehensive and reliable way, using data to underscore everything. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And you have a lot of data in your organization, so it ends up being a huge asset. And then finally, unlike LinkedIn, where people think of opportunities as jobs, inside an organization, you can really think of opportunities in a more expansive way. And the reason that matters is even back in the 1960s, I've talked to companies that had sort of internal directories and job boards. And the challenge with that is that people don't use them very regularly. And so it becomes kind of a once in a year or once in a decade or once in a month, if you're lucky, thing where people might go out and search and look for opportunities. And the fact is, opportunity is much more embedded in daily life for people now, and they expect the same thing from work. So look over on the right and you'll see the kinds of opportunities we like to encourage people to think about at companies: gigs, volunteering, of course, open roles, but also projects, learning opportunities, very simple things. And you see that kind of expanded out here. So when you think of an opportunity marketplace in your own organization, you have to think about, do we understand who our people are? Are we organizing the information around them? Number one. Number two, are we making it easy for them to find others and to be found? And number three, when we think about organizing opportunities and promoting them, are we thinking broadly enough? And that's what you see here. A few really simple examples, some that would just take a couple minutes to do, and some that would be much bigger commitments. So when we think of the marketplace, that's what we think. And I want to talk about why it's actually in some ways easier to do a really powerful internal marketplace than an external marketplace. And that is that you're sitting on a treasure trove of data in your organization about the people that you work with and the people that work around your organization. And that data is hidden in all these systems. It's in the HR system, it's in the accounting system, it's sitting on LinkedIn, it's in the resume, it's in the project system, the CRM. And what we've found is sort of a magical approach now is to take all that data sitting in those software systems and reorganize it into profiles of the people within inside your organization. So instead of them having to create and maintain a profile, they have a pretty great profile out of the gate. And again, whether you're using software to do this or kind of improvising on your own end, if your organization's at a scale where you can do that, very powerful if you have a great profile of Alex. And I want to give Heather a chance. One thing that we found is really interesting to use inside the profiles is personality data. And a service we really like for that is Predictive Index, which we learned about from working with Heather and Advisa. And you can see how that data adds a whole additional component to the profile.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. We always say at Advisa that data is a catalyst for change. And in this case, when you're able to put information about how people are motivated, how they communicate, and what they need to be at their best, when that information is served up in the palm of your hand, through that, way of connecting employees through structural, you're able to get these real-time insights that can dramatically change the way you interact. So you can see here what's pictured. It happens to be my profile, but this partnership that we've built with Structural has all been aimed at how do we get this kind of individual and even team information in the hands of people at the right moment, so that when they're talking about opportunities or when they're trying to problem solve or get creative, they have the benefit of this without having to kind of dig around for it or log into a different system. So streamlining all these different data sources about people, about opportunities is really what I think takes all of us to the next level in terms of being intentional and working more effectively in a virtual or digital world.
Heather, okay, I'm going to hand off to you in just a second.
Okay.
Some of you will have heard from, some of you are aware of Josh Burson if you work in the, particularly if you work in the HR space. This is just a really interesting quote from Josh talking about this idea of learning how to leverage internal gig work. So we all hear about the gig economy. My sort of saying I heard from a client is, it'd be nice if the gig economy started at home. If we actually gave people gigs internally as a source of learning and ongoing experiential opportunities. And of course, hearing that from Josh Burson is a very nice validation of the concept and why the power of the marketplace really has a place inside organizations. And this is a quote from one of our clients who works at a distributed firm, a PR firm that's done a bunch of acquisitions. It's become more complicated. They're grabbing different skill sets. They've hired different kinds of people over time. They also have some turnover in those folks because they have a lot of early career employees. And they talk about just getting the idea of a marketplace and a visibility into talent ingrained into their business so that they can check for people and find the right people to match to opportunities in a fluid model over time. Mark actually made a comment to me that it keeps us from just going back to the same people over and over again for the same things, which is really a kind of a industrial age way to assign projects and to find talent. All right, I'm going to let go of the presentation so you can share, Heather.
Thank you. All right. One of the things that's interesting, let me just jump ahead here, about what Scott was talking about in terms of sometimes we go to the same people all the time, your playmakers. Those of you that are familiar with Predictive Index, you know that from a personality perspective, some people are more confident about raising their hand and they're more savvy about their influence and making sure that their good work is known throughout the organization. What I love about what Structural is doing and about what Predictive Index can help you do is that it helps you have that visibility into all of your people, even those who are in PI language might be lower B, people who are not going to be as naturally vocal or proactive about sharing their accomplishments and their abilities. So this gives you a way to kind of internally source talent, give people stretch assignments because you have access to that data. So, all right, let's move on. Remember at the beginning, I said there were going to be 3 M's. So we've talked about marketplace, we talked about mindset, and the last M is what I call mastery. And so, of course, if you think about what mastery means, it means to get really, really good at something. It means to even maybe be the best at something. And so many of you may have thought or read a lot about, I know Malcolm Gladwell, wrote about the concept of 10,000 hours when he studied people who are at the top of the game, the best of the best. What is it that sets them apart? Well, it is the 10,000 hours. It is spending, a lot of time, that idea of practice makes perfect, or perfect practice makes perfect. But I also want you to think about mastery in terms of people's strengths. So if you're not already using a system like the Predictive Index for understanding people's natural motivating needs, if you're not already thinking in behavioral terms about what kinds of behaviors are required for success in a job or on a certain team, I encourage you to think about that. Because in my experience, the most transformational mastery is achieved when people's natural strengths match up with what the job requires or what the team requires of them. So that's really what this first bullet is about, is think about how to really understand better, what do each of your employees do really well naturally? What are those native behaviors that they bring to the table, and how can you cast them into roles or source them for projects and opportunities where they get to do more of what comes naturally? The second thing here is feedback, or even feed forward. You've heard of the idea of feedback. That's where we share observations and about something that happened in the past. There's also this idea of feed forward. How do we give somebody some input or some perspective that will help them be more successful going forward? And I think the idea here, in terms of really building a digital workforce with intention and opportunity, is that everyone, not just managers, needs to have the skills and the space to share their observations with their colleagues in a constructive way. Can you imagine if each of us were getting feedback all the time, not only about what we're doing well, but also about how we could be more effective going forward? That would really be transformational, and it would also unlock so many opportunities for growth and people really advantaging the opportunities that are in front of them. The third point on mastery is focusing on key behaviors. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when we sit down to coach an employee and help them improve, we might say something vague like, you need to run a better meeting, or Sally, I'd like for you to think more strategically. Well, the manager who's giving that kind of feedback has the best of intentions. They're trying to help that employee be more effective. But the way that we grow and the way day to day that we actually change and transform is by focusing on small things like a key behavior. So for the manager, for example, who needs to run better meetings because her team is complaining that the meetings are not effective, a better piece of feedback to help her master the skill of running a meeting would be something like, you know, it would be helpful if you would email an agenda for the meeting out in advance of the meeting starting, and then share that agenda during the virtual meeting and actually take notes on it. That's a key behavior. Create an agenda, share an agenda, take notes on the agenda. That's something that team leader can really focus on and dive into. And then once she masters that, then you can build something else on to that. So that's the idea. Sometimes I think what gets lost as we try to help people grow and improve and flourish within the organization, we're not being specific enough with them about key behaviors to focus on to start to make those performance changes. So we've covered a lot of ground, and I hope your wheels are turning. I hope you've gotten some good nuggets already, because what we're going to transition into are 2 breakout rooms. Scott will be facilitating one of those rooms, and I will be facilitating the other. And these are the 3 questions that we're going to engage you in conversation about. The first one, how does your organization currently share internal opportunities? Is it effective? So you'll get some cross-pollinating there. The second question, what does a typical manager one-on-one meeting look like? So we'll be able to talk through and get some different perspectives on that. And then the last question is, are you or other leaders leveraging team members' strengths relative to the work to be done. So that comparing of what is this individual good at and how does that line up with the work that we're asking them to do. So when we go into the breakout rooms, the idea is dialogue and learning. So if you would put your camera on, and you're going to want to come off mute so that we can really interact. So let me put us into breakout rooms here. I'm going to check the chat real quick before I do so. Okay, thank you.